Welcome to Fluido Moments, our podcast series where we will talk about what's it like to be a Fluidian, what we do every day, and what our culture is all about. This is your backstage pass to all things Fluido.
Hello, and welcome to this Fluido Moments podcast episode, where we talk about all things Fluido and what's it like to be a Fluidian. My name is Alex. I'm marketing manager here at Fluido, and today with me I have Duncan, who is the sales manager here at Fluido as well. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Alex. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So maybe to start off, could you tell a bit more about, what have you done before Fluido? What's your career like, and how did you end up joining the company?
So I joined Fluido last May, having spent 20 years in the financial services market, working for a number of different companies across banking, direct-to-consumer, and in the advised channels as well, where the last company I worked for, we provided solutions to help customers get the best financial outcome. I've worked in a variety of roles across sales, marketing, proposition, and operations. But my last role before I joined Fluido was managing the Salesforce team at Standard Life Aberdeen, where I led the team of developers around Salesforce, but also drove the CRM strategy across that business.
Was it your first time working with Salesforce, or have you worked with Salesforce before as well?
I'd been a user of Salesforce as a sales manager in a previous role, which never really met my expectations. And over time, I guess I built up enough experience to understand not only the business processes and how we could make those better, but how Salesforce could support them. And so it was a sort of marriage made in heaven, really, to be able to drive that strategy forward.
Oh, that's really interesting. And how did you find out about Fluido, since we're quite fresh here?
I knew Tony Russell, who's the commercial director in the UK. We met at a Salesforce user group up in Scotland. And after that, we went for a couple of beers and we were chatting away around all things Salesforce and where we felt Salesforce could be better utilised across different businesses. We had a real sort of meeting of minds in terms of our attitudes around it and our ambition, I guess, as to where Salesforce could go. Tony then joined Fluido and we picked up contact again and opened up a conversation around opportunities. And I felt sort of ready for a change, having been at the last company for over 14 years. So I felt I was ready to take a change of career. And I guess spread my knowledge of what I learned over the 5 years I was leading Salesforce at Standard Life Aberdeen into the financial services market.
And also, how do you see this transition from the industry to the consultancy world, and maybe what things are different, or if somebody's considering that move, what would you tell them?
I've actually found it quite straightforward, to be honest, because of the role that I played in my previous employer. Whilst I was managing the Salesforce team and delivery team, etc., I was actually also the sort of lead consultant for the business, driving change, thought leadership, etc., to try and help the business innovate. And so what I'm finding is that I'm now having those conversations with a much wider base of customers rather than just one company. But it's also a little easier because normally you're talking to customers who want to make a change, and therefore you're sort of taking them along on a journey they want to go on rather than having to sort of push the boulder up the hill. But I think you just got to keep a really open mind that there's a lot of different dynamics in different businesses, and you can come in from one company and think you know everything, but you clearly don't. And there's lots of different aspects that you need to understand and consider. So really taking the time to have those conversations to determine what are the main pain points, challenges, and opportunities that they want to unearth to drive forward positive outcomes for their organisation.
Yeah. And how do you see, now that you are part of the company, how do you see your role kind of in relation to driving the sector, working together with Salesforce and other partners? What do you see kind of as the opportunity?
Yeah, so there is a bit of a lack of industry knowledge in the Salesforce ecosystem. A lot of guys doing some great stuff, working with great customers, but largely have come from a technology background or sort of technology sales background. And so they don't necessarily understand the business challenges and opportunities that exist. So for me, it's a great opportunity to share that insight, share that understanding of the financial services market in particular, and show how Salesforce could be adopted to solve those business problems or create opportunities for the future.
And what do you see as some current gaps in the financial sector? Where could the Salesforce and other solutions come in, and what needs to be done?
So financial services, very broadly, and a very general statement, is a bit behind the times in terms of adopting technology. There's lots of quite good fintech capabilities being built out, but it's very pointed to a specific process or outcome or situation. But actually, I think there's an opportunity to create a much more holistic approach to supporting financial outcomes for clients and the ways that those businesses offer those. On that basis, we're starting to build out some capabilities that which will join up different parts of the business and remove this sort of front and back office mentality that a lot of businesses have, and just create one office that is seamless, creates great experiences, derives really efficient outcomes for the business overall, but ultimately drives a much better client engagement. And that's where there's a big opportunity in financial services. Wealth transfer is a massive challenge globally because of the demographics of clients who receive advice today. They will be passing on their wealth, and the generations that are receiving that wealth want and demand better access, more modern channels of engagement, and more interaction with their finances. And right now, the technology that's in this market is not delivering on that at all. Salesforce is primed to support that if we can structure it in the right way and leverage the right parts of the ecosystem.
Yeah, and what do you see as a way to implement that, to solve that?
So I'm currently designing a proposition that we can take to market, hopefully, which will bring together core parts of Salesforce in terms of various clouds and components, but also bring in third-party solutions as well, which will connect to fully drive an end-to-end journey for a client, but also drive end-to-end business process, risk management, cost management, and drive real efficiencies across all of those aspects.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I'm really looking forward to actually seeing this realizing. And if you could talk a bit more, so Infosys recently has signed a partnership with Financial Force, and we at Fluido also work with them. How do you see kind of us working with them and also, maybe also other ISVs in the financial sector?
Yeah, the partnership with Financial Force is really exciting. I think that there's a significant opportunity to support businesses with removal of that front and back office piece that I mentioned through much more effective management of the finances of the business, but also the resources they're using to transform the way they operate. So we've been building out a proposal to drive that practice forward, which is, as I say, really exciting on the basis of we've got a lot of shared clients. We play in the same markets, but they are one part of a wider ecosystem. And I think there's lots of capabilities out there that connect and work alongside Salesforce, which combined can create a very powerful proposition and actually accelerate innovation in the market, and financial services particularly, but others as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really good also that it covers a lot of other industries as well. So although it only targets the financial part of the company, but then we still could work with a lot of different industries together with them.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when we go through the target sectors, there's a real great alignment across both our businesses, and that's where it fits really nicely, and we can complement each other. It's also going to give us other opportunities to extend our Salesforce relationship within these businesses to drive other services that will be required, in particular around integration, data migration, etc., which is not something that Financial Force specifically do, but will open up the opportunity to have those conversations.
Yeah, that sounds really great and very promising. So what are some of the things that you're hoping to achieve, and what's your kind of vision for the industry and what we could bring to the table?
Yeah, so we need to validate some of my thinking around this proposition, and I've been having a number of conversations with my network and contacts in the financial services market, and everything I'm saying so far is landing well, which is promising. But we do need to validate it properly. So we are conducting some research across the space to, I guess, determine where the gaps are, where the opportunities lie, but actually also expose the lack of innovation that exists in this space. We need to make that much more prominent so that people will start to take action and recognize that this market needs to evolve. It's falling behind others, and client base and the next generation of clients will demand access to very modern technologies. So the research we're running will be conducted across product providers, fund managers, as well as advisory businesses. So we'll get a really broad insight as to the different parties that play a role in this space. We're also going to do some research with end clients around the wealth transfer piece with regards to what their expectations are when they inherit money from their parents or family members, and how they want to interact with advisors and financial institutions to again validate the proposition we're trying to bring together.
That I think that would help that a lot, and also would be interesting to actually know what exactly is happening in the market and then provide.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important we deal with fact.
Yeah.
And research will give us a large element of that. It's always an indication, but it's giving us the facts we need to base our case around it and to prove out to all the parties involved, not just the end customers, but Salesforce and other third parties, that this is something worth investing in. So really excited about the work we're going to be doing and bringing this together.
And coming back to you working at Fluido, so this is one question that we always ask in this podcast about, since the name is Fluido Moments, what is something that you could call during your experience here as a Fluido moment? What was something that, I don't know, made you happy, excited? I don't know, anything that you can come up with.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, from the moment I joined the company, it was just really impressed with the way that the values of the business are seen and lived and breathed every day. So from the moment I landed, in fact, before I even joined the company, I was getting messages from my Fluido friend introducing himself and getting ready to meet up when I got into the business. And that's just continued throughout the whole time in terms of getting the letter of feedback, the interactions we have through the different forums and fun events and so on that we have online. And it's a really great culture that's in the business, and it's evident all the time. I've come from other businesses where culture is talked about and it's mentioned in communications, but it's not really lived and breathed, and it absolutely is here. So it's been brilliant. Just really enjoying the whole experience of working at Fluido and having the opportunity to be creative with opportunities to grow the market.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I know that the team also loves working with you. So I think it's great to be part of the team. I agree as well. Well, thank you for this great chat. I think we've talked a lot already, and hopefully we'll talk more in the future episodes.
No problem. That was good to be here.
And for our audience, if you are looking to see more of those episodes, you could always subscribe to receive them by email at fluidogroup.com.